The long-awaited ihtifal has finally arrived. As you know, Mr. Nakhjavani, the speaker tonight, was scheduled to give this ihtifal and this talk at the beginning of January, but he was taken ill. Then later, because of the passing of Amatul Baha, Ruhiya Khanum, followed by Mr. Tahirzadeh, again it was postponed. And it so happened that we get to hear this talk during the fast. And therefore, these two laws of obligatory prayer and fasting, which are the two pillars which sustain the revealed law of God, happens to coincide in this case anyway. I should have started by welcoming each and every one of you to this ihtifal, especially those members of the Universal House of Justice and of the International Teaching Center who happen to be here tonight. The topic is the long obligatory prayer, and the speaker is very well known to all of us. We know that Mr. Nakhjavani has a long record of devoted service to the cause of Baha'u'llah. More than 50 years he has served on the National Spiritual Assemblies of Iran, of Central and East Africa, on the International Baha'i Council, and on the Universal House of Justice ever since its inception in 1963. And not long ago, you heard from Mrs. Nakhjavani about one of their travels in Africa, so you can imagine what kind of services he and his family have been rendering. There is one aspect of Mr. Nakhjavani's life, or I should say of Mr. and Mrs. Nakhjavani's life, which may be less known to the friends. And I'd like to briefly say something about that aspect. Mr. Nakhjavani's family, ever since the time of Baha'u'llah, have been closely associated with the Holy Family. His great-grandfather, Janab Muhammad Ibrahim, from Nairis, a survivor of the two upheavals of Nairis, went to Baghdad, and there he attained the presence of Baha'u'llah and served him. Baha'u'llah gave him the title of Amir because he was princely looking, tall, strong, and very heroic. When Baha'u'llah traveled from Baghdad to Istanbul and then to Adrianople and Akka, this man guarded Baha'u'llah's tent day and night. He married one of the ladies of the house who served in the household of Baha'u'llah by the name of Habiba Khanum, and it was their granddaughter named Fatma Khanum who was personally selected by Abdul Baha to serve the greatest holy leaf. And that is Mr. Nakhjavani's mother. And it wasn't a coincidence in my mind that her daughter-in-law became the traveling companion of Amatul Baha, Ruhiya Khanum, the last link with Abdul Baha's family, as the Universal House of Justice reminded us. Ever since the establishment of the Universal House of Justice, Mrs. Violette Nakhjavani was with Khanum in almost all the trips that she took throughout the world. I say almost because two of them, Mrs. Nakhjavani could not accompany her. So you can imagine how this whole thing started and unfortunately ended with the passing of Amatul Baha Ruhi Khanum. That kind of service ended. However, there are other kinds of services that Mr. Nakhjavani and Mrs. Nakhjavani are actively engaged in. Before I get too far carried away, I will stop, and because the topic is so important, I will request Mr. Nakhjavani to enlighten us on the long obligatory prayer.
Thank you very much. I have to wake up. I know during the fast it's a little bit difficult for all of us. All right, let's see now. Yeah. The subject is, of course, a very important one, and more than interesting, very inspiring subject for all of us. Whether I will be able to make the treatment of the subject worthwhile, I don't know. I hope you will pray for me and see how it will go. I thought of have divided the subjects that I'm going to present to you under 9 headings. Some of the headings will take time. Others maybe one minute or two, so don't be frightened when I read the list for you. One is on the question of the importance of obligatory prayers generally. The other is the significance of the long obligatory prayer. Then, what is the beginning of the 24-hour period for the long obligatory prayer? The question of cleanliness when one performs obligatory prayers. Ablutions, the qibla. Then, this next one is going to take a little bit of time. Movements and positions as directed by Baha'u'llah. Then the question, it won't take more than a minute, about memorizing the text. And then finally, I'll give you my humble comments about the prayer itself on the various sections of the prayer. In order to treat these things, to deal with these things, I have no choice but to read for you, because I think it's better for us to hear what Baha'u'llah and Abdul Baha and Shoghi Effendi have said on the subject, instead of for me to express my personal views on the subject. For example, on this question of obligatory prayers, by the way, some of these passages that I'm going to read are provisional translations, and I hope the members of the House of Justice will not report me to the House for sharing some of these which are not 100% kosher yet. All right. So from Baha'u'llah, cling firmly to obligatory prayer and fasting. Verily, the religion of God is like unto heaven. Fasting is its sun, and obligatory prayer is its moon. In truth, they are the pillars of religion, whereby the righteous are distinguished from those who transgress His commands. We entreat God, exalted and glorified be He, to graciously enable all to observe that which He hath revealed in His ancient book. Again from Baha'u'llah, how great, how very great can the law of obligatory prayer be, when through His mercy and loving kindness one is enabled to observe it. When a man commenceth the recitation of the obligatory prayer, he should see himself severed from all created things and regard himself as utter nothingness before the will and purpose of God, in such wise that he seeth naught but him in the world of being. This is the station of God's well-favored ones, and those who are wholly devoted to him. Should one perform the obligatory prayer in this manner, he will be accounted by God and the concourse on high among those who have truly observed prayer. Again from Baha'u'llah, when a man proceedeth to recite the obligatory prayer, he should be severed from all created things and regard himself as utter nothingness beside the will of God, in such wise that he beholdeth naught but him in the world of being. This is the station of the well-favored who are wholly devoted to him. Two more passages. Anyone who readeth the obligatory prayer with absolute sincerity will attract all created things and confer new life upon the world of being. A tremendous statements made by Baha'u'llah. Obligatory prayers will deliver the friends from this world's vicissitudes, its preoccupations, its frustrations, and its darkness. In one of his tablets, Baha'u'llah quotes one of the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad. Obligatory prayer is a ladder of ascent for the believer. Then he comments on this statement by Muhammad, the Prophet. How great would be a man's indolence and his injustice to himself if he were to abandon this ladder of ascent and attach himself to earthly things. Okay, so now from Abul Baha. O thou spiritual friend, thou hast asked about the wisdom of obligatory prayer. Know thou that such prayer is mandatory and binding. Man under no pretext whatsoever is excused from observing the prayer unless he is incapable of performing it or some great obstacle interveneth. The wisdom of obligatory prayer is this, that it causeth a connection between the servant and the true one, because at that time man with all his heart and soul turneth his face towards the Almighty, seeking his association and desiring his love and companionship. For a lover, there is no greater pleasure than to converse with his beloved. And for a seeker, there is no greater bounty than intimacy with the object of his longing. O thou daughter of the kingdom, the obligatory prayers are binding inasmuch as they are conducive to humility and submissiveness, to setting one's face towards God and expressing devotion to Him. Through such prayer, man holdeth communion with God, seeketh to draw near unto Him, converseth with the true beloved of his heart, and attaineth spiritual stations. Obligatory prayer causeth the heart to become attentive to the divine kingdom. One is alone with God, converseth with Him, and acquireth bounties. If one performeth the obligatory prayer with his heart, in a state of utmost purity, he will obtain the confirmations of the Holy Spirit, which will cause self-love to be totally obliterated. Obligatory prayer is the very foundation of the cause of God. Through it, joy and gladness infuse the heart. Even if every grief should surround me, as soon as I engage, this is from Abul Baha, as soon as I engage in conversing with God in obligatory prayer, all of my sorrows disappear, and I attain joy and gladness. A condition descendeth upon me which I am unable to describe or express. Whenever, with full awareness and humility, we undertake to perform the obligatory prayer before God, and we recite it with heartfelt tenderness, we shall taste such sweetness as to endow all existence with eternal life. It's beautiful. The obligatory prayer is the cause of awakening and mindfulness, and conducive to protection and preservation from tests. Two more from Abdul Baha, very short. When saying the obligatory prayer, one must turn towards the holy reality of Baha'u'llah, that reality which encompasseth all things. With regard to the obligatory prayer, this should be said individually, but it is not dependent on a private spot. This is a very important point that Abdul Baha is making here. From Shoghi Effendi, only 4 passages, very brief. The daily prayers are to be said each one for himself, or aloud or silent, makes no difference. The obligatory prayers are by their very nature of greater effectiveness and are endowed with a greater power than the non-obligatory ones. Shall I read this again? The obligatory prayers are by their very nature of greater effectiveness and are endowed with a greater power than the non-obligatory ones. The daily prayers have been endowed with a special potency, which only those who regularly recite them can adequately appreciate. The friends should therefore endeavor to make daily use of these prayers, whatever the peculiar circumstances and conditions of their life. And this last one from Shoghi Effendi, the instructions that accompany these prayers should be entirely and confidently carried out by the believers, and particularly by the Baha'i youth. Are you there, Baha'i youth? You listen? And particularly by the Baha'i youth, on whose shoulders has been laid the chief responsibility of vindicating the truth and preserving the integrity of the laws and ordinances of the faith. Now, more particularly about the long obligatory prayer. This is from Baha'u'llah. One should perform the obligatory prayer, the first one, because in the original, the long one comes first. One should perform the first obligatory prayer at whatever time one findeth oneself in a state of humbleness and longing adoration. So, I see there are 2 more passages here. The obligatory prayer hath in truth been revealed by the all-glorious pen, in such wise as to set aflame the souls and attract the hearts and minds. Now this, of course, refers to all the three obligatory prayers. But as it applies particularly to the long one, this is why I included it in this passage here, in this section here. And finally, from Baha'u'llah, this is very important. If you forget everything, don't forget this one that I'm going to read. One of the new obligatory prayers that were later revealed, the long obligatory prayer, should be said at those times when one feeleth in himself a prayerful mood. In truth, it hath been revealed in such wise that if it be recited to a rock, that rock would stir and speak forth. And if it be recited to a mountain, that mountain would move and flow. Well is it with the one who reciteth it and fulfilleth God's precepts. Whichever prayer is read will suffice. Of course, the rock and the mountain are symbolic. For example, the mountain refers usually in the Quran particularly to the leaders of religion. They are referred to as the mountains. And the rocks are the followers who are not sensitive to the truth. They are like rocks, they are like pebbles, like stones. And mountains are the leaders. So he says that if you read this long obligatory prayer to an unbelieving soul, he will be stirred and he will speak forth. And if you read it to one of the leaders, he will move and flow. I am using my turban. Rohi Khanum used to say sometimes Ali puts on a turban and starts interpreting. That's what I'm doing. So 2 sections are over. I'm sure that you allowed these words, these heavenly words, to sink into your souls. It was like an orchestra. It's music. It's the divine melody of the heads of our faith commenting about obligatory prayers, and particularly the long one. Now, the next section is very brief. It's the question that is often asked, all right, this long obligatory prayer is for 24 hours, and when do the 24 hours begin? From when shall I count the 24 hours? This question was put to the House of Justice, and this is what has been stated by the House. The beginning of the 24-hour period for the recitation of the long obligatory prayer has not been specifically stated in the sacred texts, and the Universal House of Justice has not made any ruling on this point. You see, it's left to the individual, basically, because 24 hours for one person may be different because of his life, because of the job that he has. Some people work at night and sleep during the day, and the rest are different. So you have to use your own judgment as to when your 24 hours begin and when do they end. And stick to that, depending on the circumstances of your life. And that's between you and the Lord. Another very important, but it won't take long to discuss it, is the question of cleanliness and what clothes one wears, and if there is a stain on the dress that one is wearing. So because of what Baha'u'llah says in the Kitab-i-Aqdas, our quote, God hath enjoined upon you to observe the utmost cleanliness, to the extent of washing what is soiled with dust, let alone with hardened dirt and similar defilement. Fear him and be of those who are pure. Should the garb of anyone be visibly sullied, his prayers shall not ascend to God, and the celestial concourse will turn away from him. Of course, he also says that there may be circumstances when one is, because of one's profession, maybe can't do that. So there is always that possibility. But one should always try to be clean outwardly. And that's an important thing. And it is definitely conducive to spirituality, as Abdul Baha says. And there are many quotations on this subject, so we won't go into that. On the question of ablutions, in the East, it is generally believed, and the House of Justice's decision was contrary to the practice of the Baha'is in the East. And that is that the words revealed by Baha'u'llah for the ablutions, for the medium prayer, should be used always, at all times, whether it is for the medium prayer, whether it is used for the short obligatory prayer, or whether it is used for the long one, or whether it is used when one wants to repeat 95 times Allahu Akbar. Now, there is no prohibition, obviously, for anyone to repeat those words that are revealed when one is having one's ablutions. But the House of Justice has made it very clear that those words are particular to the medium obligatory prayer. So when we have ablutions, we are not required to repeat those words, and we just wash our hands and our face. But it should be in a prayerful attitude, obviously, because this, the House of Justice explains, is in preparation for the prayer that one wants to perform. I quote this few lines. Reciting the words specified in the medium obligatory prayer pertains only to that prayer. That is, for the short and long obligatory prayers, it would be sufficient to wash one's hands and face in preparation for each of these two prayers. So there is a need for preparation. You remember, I just read for you a tradition from the Prophet Muhammad about the ladder. It is, supposing you want, let's take that example, the ladder. The ladder may be in the storeroom. So you have to get the ladder and position the ladder. This is, you are preparing yourself to climb the ladder, which is the prayer itself. So it is this type of preparation. One should be in the mood, in the spirit of the prayer. So as we wash our hands, we wash our face, we should be turning our hearts to Baha'u'llah. Now, if we want to repeat those words for the medium obligatory prayer, of course, there's no prohibition towards that. And you may feel that this is very helpful. Look at the shrines here and in Haifa, and in Baji. You see that Shoghi Effendi has surrounded these shrines with gardens. Look at the Mashraq al-Askars. Abdul Baha says they should be surrounded by gardens on all sides, and the avenues leading to the doors. Now, this is itself, it symbolizes preparation. Baha'u'llah in the Kitab al-Aqdas says, as you direct your steps towards the Mashraq al-Askar, remember the Lord and ask for forgiveness for your trespasses. You are not yet in the temple. You are moving towards the temple. You see? So there is this idea of preparing oneself for an act of worship. And it's very important. So I think this is what I felt I should say about ablutions. On the question of the qibla, this was very clear in the days of Shoghi Effendi. He repeated this over and over again to the Western friends, to the Eastern friends, everybody. And of course it's clearly stated in the Kitab al-Aqdas and in questions and answers. And then later Abdul Baha made it absolutely clear that this is the shrine of Baha'u'llah, which is our qibla. And so we turn in prayer to the shrine, wherever we may be in the world. And it's not going to be difficult for you to look at your geography and your maps and determine in what direction you should stand to face Akka, to face Baji. The question of why we are turning to Baji, which is the shrine of Baha'u'llah. Someone has asked Shoghi Effendi, and this is his answer. This is a physical symbol of an inner reality, just as the plant stretches out to the sunlight, from which it receives life and growth. So we turn our hearts to the manifestation of God, Baha'u'llah, when we pray. And we turn our faces during this short prayer, or the person was asking about the short obligatory prayer, to where his dust lies on this earth as a symbol of the inner act. Now we come to the question, which is a very intricate question of the movements and the positions in the long obligatory prayer. And this requires some explanation. That's why we have these flip charts here. Now, first general from Abdul Baha. In every word and movement of the obligatory prayer, there are allusions, mysteries, and a wisdom that man is unable to comprehend, and letters and scrolls cannot contain. This is from Abdul Baha. And from Shoghi Effendi, the directions have a spiritual significance and help the individual to fully concentrate when praying and meditating. Again from Shoghi Effendi, Baha'u'llah has reduced all rituals and forms to an absolute minimum in his faith. The few forms that there are only symbols of the inner attitude. There is a wisdom in them and a great blessing. So I think we will move on. Now we come to the question of the genuflections and the prostrations and the bowings and the sitting and everything else. First of all, I would like to introduce this subject with a statement from Baha'u'llah. Baha'u'llah has a tablet. It is known as the Tablet of Unity, Lawh-e-Ittihad. And those of you who are Persian can see the entire tablet in Adiyah Hazrat Mahbub, at the very end of the book. In this tablet, he names or identifies a number of aspects of Baha'i life which could lead to disunity. And if properly adhered, according to principle, adhered to, then it would lead to unity. So one of the things that he points out in this tablet is this question of the movements in obligatory prayer. And I'll just read you a few sentences from this tablet. Another aspect of unity is unity. This is also provisional. It's not Another aspect of unity is unity of devotional acts, inasmuch as differences in such acts is conducive to dissension. In the days of his exile, this wronged one entered a mosque on the road between Baghdad and Adrianople. In that place, divergent performances of the obligatory prayer were observed. Differences in acts of worship caused divisions of the faith and weakened it. One was praying with hands folded, another with hands at the sides. One bore witness with the word tahiyyat, which is a special way of salutation in Islam. Another preferred as-salam to be the salutation, and so on and so forth. Then he continues and he says, regard the faith of the apostle of God. May the souls of all be sacrificed unto him as a sea that hath been divided into unnumbered narrow straits. Such division hath caused the weakening of the religion of God among the people. So from this little thing about how to stand and how to bow and how to kneel and how to prostrate and so on, how to raise hands and so on, in Islam it has caused divisions. And Baha'u'llah is warning us that these things should never be the cause of division. Now, Shoghi Effendi has helped a great deal as interpreter of the teachings in giving us his understanding of what Baha'u'llah had in mind. In this little prayer book that we all have, it is right there, and the way he has done it, as I've been looking at it, the order in the original text of Baha'u'llah is first the long obligatory prayer. That's the first one. The second one is the medium one. And the third one is the short one. Now, in prayers and meditations, Shoghi Effendi has reversed the order. He has put first the short obligatory prayer, then the medium one, then the long one. Now, this is interesting because as we proceed, I think we may be able to guess why he did that. First of all, in the long obligatory prayer, there are 6 positions. There are 4 in the medium one, and there is 1 in the short obligatory prayer. The one in the short obligatory prayer is to stand. That's it. That is the position. In the medium prayer, you have that standing, and you have 3 others. In the long one, in the long obligatory prayer, you have the standing, but you have 2 types of standing. There is one standing and one standing erect. He makes a distinction between 2 ways of standing. Standing and standing erect. And that's also very clear in the original text. Then other positions. All right. The common denominator, as I was telling you, of the 3 prayers is the standing. The 3 in common in the medium and long one are standing with hands raised in supplication, bending down with hands resting on the knees, and being seated. These 3 are common to the medium one as well as the long one. He explains these instructions in italics. Therefore, you have 2 positions left. One was standing erect, because it's not in the medium one, It's not in the short one. And the other one are the prostrations, to prostrate oneself on the floor, which he describes very clearly under section 3 and 14 of the Long Obligatory Prayer. Now, by following this order, what has he achieved? By changing the order, what has he achieved? He has been able to avoid being repetitive, because if he had started with the long one, and then the second one, and then the third one, probably it would be repetitive. So it's a gradual increase in the positions for the West, rather than bringing the whole thing first and then going down and making it less. This is again with my turban on. Now, in the original text, Baha'u'llah mentions just one word, not the description of how it should be. The description is added by Shoghi Effendi as interpreter. When we come to the flip chart, I will be able to explain these to you. Now, I have put, for those of you who speak Persian and Arabic, the Arabic text here. Baha'u'llah uses this word only, you see, which is standing. And this is the work, by the way, of Mr. Mehrdad Muhrigi. And I'm going to thank him on your behalf. So this is very clear. Now this, standing erect, as you see, it's a little bit different from the first one, because the head is a little bit lifted up so that the back is completely straight. Qiyam mustaqim. Then this one here is just one word, qunut, for the East. But Shoghi Effendi has explained it in the English text. Standing with hands raised in supplication, i.e., with open hands and palms upward toward the face. All these you find in the medium obligatory prayer when he is explaining to have the position of supplication. So he gives this for this one word, qunut, and he has explained it for the West. And this is roughly how it should be, with open hands and palms upward toward the face. Now, as I said, if you like to do it in a different way, you're welcome, but let's not fight about it. And this is ruku', one word, bending down with hands resting on the knees. These are the words of Shoghi Effendi to describe this position here. Now, you can bend more, you can bend less. You are free. God bless you. And then the question of sitting. Seating oneself, sitting on both knees upon one's heels. Now, that he only says being seated or sitting, all right? But Abdul Baha has a tablet in which he says if you sit like this, which is sitting on both knees upon one's heels, is better if you are able to do this. It's not a secret, and my wife knows it. I just cannot do this. But she knows how to do it. I don't know whether after the surgery she is able to do it in the same way or not. But this is very common in the East, but because I have some problem with my knees, I think what it is, I've never been able to do it. But Abdul Baha says it's preferable. This is one way of sitting. Dozanu in Persian they call it. Dozanu. And this one seating oneself, sitting cross-legged. This is Chahar Zanu. I was able to do this. Really, believe me, I can't do it now. Yes, that's the end of it. Now, regarding this question of seating, someone has asked the House of Justice about sitting. One of the believers, this is from one of the letters of the House of Justice. One of the believers asked the guardian a question about the correct position for sitting. From the context, it seems clear that this question is related to the medium prayer. But this is not explicitly stated. The guardian's reply states that sitting on a chair is permissible, but to sit on the floor is preferable and more fitting. So, make your choices. I think we will leave this dear girl in her position here. The question of memorizing is something that has been asked. You see, memorizing, when you have to do these things, particularly, I have not put here the prostration. But prostration is something that we do in the shrine. We all see it, we have done it, so there was no need for Mr. Morigi to draw it again for us here. But there are, on 2 occasions, one has to prostrate oneself in the Long Obligatory Prayer. And how is it possible to have you prostrate yourself and also you have the book? It's difficult. When you have your hands on your knees, what are you going to do? You're going to keep your book? One of the knees is not going to receive you, one of the hands. So I think by the very nature of the Long Obligatory Prayer, again I'm putting my turban on, it is assumed that one has to memorize this, you know. And of course at the beginning it may be difficult, but after repeating it and so on, God understands, I think. I don't have a direct link, but I think He will understand. You can use the book at the beginning and then keep on. Persevere, and you will memorize it. There is so much in the writings of Abdul Baha and Shoghi Effendi about the importance of memorizing the writings. And this Long Obligatory Prayer. Now, the last part is some comments on the text itself. And that's why the copy of the prayer was distributed. Now, in prayer, I gave you the Prophet Muhammad gave the example of the ladder. And I introduced my thinking about ablutions by finding the ladder and positioning it, right? Now, what do? We want to climb. How do we climb? We climb through and with the help of the revealed word. That's how we climb. And as we read the revealed word, we must understand the meaning of the words. And when we follow the meaning and immerse ourselves in the meaning, then many mysteries, many concealed gems come to light. And we begin to understand something that we did not understand before. Because we are taking steps, going up the ladder. Listen to these words that you are well familiar with from the Kitab al-Aqdas. Immerse yourselves in the ocean of my words, that ye may unravel its secrets, discover all the pearls of wisdom that lie hid in its depths. And again, in one of the prayers of the fast, he says, inspire then my soul, O my God, with thy wondrous remembrance, that I may glorify thy name. Number me, and here is this key sentence, number me not with them who read thy words and failed to find thy hidden gift, which as decreed by thee is contained therein, and which quickeneth the souls of thy creatures and the hearts of thy servants. So when we read particularly the Long Obligatory Prayer, it is so important to follow the thinking of Baha'u'llah, the use of his words. What is he telling us? What is he asking us to say? And what is the meaning, what is the implication of these thoughts and these gems that he has placed, like concealed in his words? So that's very important. And it is this thing, this following the meaning of these words, that enable us to climb this ladder. All right. I'm sure you must be very tired. No? Shall we continue? Because from now on I'm going to put my turban on, everything else. Oh, beloved Khanum. Okay, let's take the text now. The first section, O thou who art the Lord of all names and the maker of the heavens. Now when we come across this word names in the writings of Baha'u'llah particularly, it doesn't mean Ali and Violette and John and Thomas and so on. It doesn't mean that. It means the names and attributes of God. All names means He the just, He the loving, He the merciful, He the all-conquering, He the all-subduing, etc. So these are the names. So, O thou the desire of the world and the beloved of the nations, thou seest me turning towards thee. Oh, sorry, this is number 1. O thou who art the Lord of all names and the maker of the heavens. Now heaven, of course, in one meaning of heaven is heaven. But when we come across this word heaven, just as we spoke about mountains and rocks and so on, heaven means the heaven of religion. Baha'u'llah explains this in the Kitab-i-Iqan. So the heavens, He is the maker of the religions. That means He is the source of all revelation. Heaven here. Earth is you and me. Heaven is divine revelation. Earth is us, the world of creation. But the world of revelation, that is referred to, when you come across this heavens and earth, this is, most of the time, it means this. Sometimes it has a literal meaning, obviously. All right, that is the first question. It's impossible for me to dwell on every single word, as you realize. I just thought I will make some comments about some of the passages. In section 2, as I read this section 2, I see there are 3 sections to this section. There's three parts to this section. The first one is the importance of detachment. O thou, the desire of the world and the beloved of nations, thou seest me turning towards thee and rid of all attachment to anyone save thee. You remember we read here passages that when we are reading the obligatory prayer, we must be detached from everything. We must focus our minds on Him and forget everything else. This is one section, this paragraph here. I see it, as I said, in three parts. One is the importance of detachment for prayer, and it comes right at the very beginning. The second part is, behold me standing ready to do thy will and thy desire, and wishing naught else except thy good pleasure. I implore thee by the ocean of thy mercy and the day star of thy grace, to do with thy servant as thou willest and pleasest, by thy might, which is far above all mention and praise. Whatsoever, this is the key sentence, whatsoever is revealed by thee is the desire of my heart and the beloved of my soul. You think it's easy to really say this with a full heart? Or do we have our own desires, our own wishes, our own preferences? And it's difficult for us to say, yes, I have a preference, but I subordinate my will into thy will, to thy will. I merge my will in thy will. I have no will of my own. Why? Because I don't know what is good for me and what is bad for me. Baha'u'llah tells me this in his prayers. I know not, O my God, what profiteth me and what harmeth me. I don't know. Who knows? Nobody knows. He knows what is good for each one of us. And so we should surrender our will, subordinate our will to His will. And this is a very important subject. At the very end of this paragraph, he comes back to this theme. The last sentence is, I have desired only what thou didst desire, and love only what thou dost love. We should be able to believe this. We should be able to say these words with conviction, with assurance that this is so. So it becomes part and parcel of our feeling, of our belief. This is why it is so important. This is why he says if you read it to a rock, it will move. A mountain will flow. Because it has power. And the middle thought is what? Behold me standing ready to do thy will. O God, my God, look not upon my hopes and my doings. Nay, rather look upon thy will that hath encompassed the heavens and the earth. By thy most great name, O thou Lord of all nations, I have desired only what thou dost desire, and love only what thou dost live. Now, this thought here, my hopes and doings, listen to the words of Abdul Baha in one of his tablets. He says, I constantly recite this phrase from the Long Obligatory Prayer. O God, my God, look not upon my hopes and my doings. Nay, rather look upon thy will that hath encompassed the heavens and the earth. This is the utmost hope of Abdul Baha. This is the utmost hope of Abdul Baha. He says, I repeat these words of the Long Obligatory Prayer constantly. Just put this in a tablet. Now, if he does it, how about you and me? This is an awareness that our hopes and our doings, Baha'u'llah wants to tell us, your hopes and your doings could very well be not in conformity with my plans for you, with my destiny for you. Give up your own plans. Make your plans by all means, but make your plans dependent upon my good pleasure, upon my will, and see what happens. Depend upon me, rely upon me. You love me, I love you. You are inviting me into your life, I will come into your life. I will take over your life. I will interfere in your life. They asked one of the Imams, how did you know God? He said, by the way he interferes in my life. By the way he changes my plans. That's how I've come to know God. So if we allow him, he will come in. He says, thy heart is my home. Cleanse it for my descent. He wants to come in. He wants to take over because he loves us. We are his servants, his lovers, his own people. So, now the next section that I would like to comment on is number 4, make my prayer, O my Lord, a fountain of living waters whereby I may live as long as thy sovereignty endureth, and may make mention of thee in every world of thy worlds. In other words, give me eternal life. Not only physical life, because my physical life will come to an end. Give me eternal life, so that I can live as long as thy sovereignty endureth, which is forever, which is immortality, which is eternity. And I may make mention of thee in every world of thy worlds. More than one world. When we talk about the next world, it has layers and worlds within worlds. We can't conceive. It's impossible for us to comprehend what it is. But he lifts the veil from time to time for us with these words. And he himself says these are just ordinary, simple words. You don't understand. How can an embryo in the womb of its mother understand what fresh air is? What sunlight is? How can it understand what food is? What the milk of the mother tastes? It's impossible for this embryo to understand any of this, leave alone other things. Look at all the worlds within worlds that this embryo has to pass through. From childhood, from babyhood to childhood, this is another world. To maturity, then to adolescence, then to maturity, then to full maturity. When I was on pilgrimage one day, Shoghi Effendi spoke about age 21, age 15, and then he said, in Persian he was talking, he said, and the age of Kamal. I said, what is the age of Kamal? Kamal in Persian is perfection. And he said 40. Age 40. That was new to me. So it is full maturity. When you reach that age of full maturity. So look at all the worlds that this baby has to go through. The layers of development that it has to go through. So these are when we pray for the souls, for the progress of their souls, I'm just thinking, maybe even my conjectures and guesses are way off the point. But I'm just giving you whatever comes to my mind. Okay, now let's move on. The next paragraph, which is 5, starts a whole process of words that Baha'u'llah uses in this prayer. He starts by, in the middle of the paragraph, this stranger. Then he goes on, this transgressor. Again he goes on, this lowly one. And finally in this paragraph, this poor creature. Now if you skim through the entire long obligatory prayer, you come across other words. This wretched creature, this evanescent soul, this powerless one, this soul needing God's forgiveness. Then describing our condition, the condition of the worshipper. He says, in tears, sighing, groaning, wailing, in lamentation. Why? Because of my trespasses, my shortcomings, my sins. He goes on, my back is bowed. This heedless one, I'm destroyed by separation from thee. This remote one, beset by the hosts of idle fancies and vain imaginings. Now, when we look at this list, we say, now, isn't this an exaggeration? Am I so bad at all this? I thought I wasn't that bad. So, I one day asked myself this question. And I said to myself, all right, Ali, have I been just really all the time? Have I been fair? Have I been courteous? Am I detached? Have I really tried not to be hypocritical? Have I not shown pride? Am I free from envy and jealousy? Have I not preferred myself to my neighbor? Have I not lost my temper? Have I not angered anyone? These are all taken from the Kitab al-Aqdas. All from tablets or Kitab al-Aqdas. I am not inventing these words at all. These are all injunctions of Baha'u'llah. How to live the life. And it's by no means everything. It's just a selection. Have I said all my obligatory prayers? Am I honoring my parents? Have I honored them? Have I immersed myself in the study of his writings? Have I read his writings at morn and eventide, twice a day, as he has enjoined me to do? Shall I go on with my list? Few more. Has my eye been chaste? Leave alone my chastity. Have I gossiped? Have I engaged in backbiting? Have I concealed the sins of others? Have I saddened anyone? Am I humble? Am I truly honest? Am I meek? Have I been selfless? Have I been bringing myself to account each day? So you see, this list can go on. But it shows our, I'm not talking about any one of you, no. I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about the person sitting next to you. But really, if we bring ourselves to account and we are fair about ourselves, we'll see how far we are from the standard that he is inculcating in us, the Baha'i life, the high Baha'i. So when he says, say that I am wretched, it means that I am wretched. When he says you should be in tears and I don't have my tears, it means that at least inwardly I should feel that I am in tears, that I am lamenting my condition. This is how it should be. So I think there is good reason for Baha'u'llah to put these words and concepts in this long obligatory prayer so that we become aware, so that we wake up and we become vigilant and alert and really realize how far we are from the standards that he has inculcated. Let's move on. It won't take too long. Let him, on page 6, I have no comments on section number 6. We come to section number 7. Let him stand and raise his hands twice in supplication. Now, this question has come up before, and the House of Justice has written this to someone who has asked this very question, what this means. I'm reading from the letter of the House. In following the direction stating, let him then stand and raise his hands twice in supplication and say, the believer does not have to read twice the paragraph which follows. Whether the believer raises his hands twice before the reciting of the paragraph or commences the reciting after having raised his hands once and raises them a second time soon thereafter is left to his choice. I hope this is clear. So we move on. Here, the section number 7 has ends with a sentence which I think I would like to comment on if there is time. Thine is the command at all times, O thou who art the Lord of all names, and mine is resignation and willing submission to thy will, O Creator of the heavens. Now, this resignation and willing submission are not the same. They are not synonymous. Especially this is much clearer when you read the Persian or the Arabic. Those of you who speak Persian and Arabic, taslim has been translated by Shoghi Effendi, resignation. Riza has been translated here by Shoghi Effendi as willing submission. Right? Even in the English you can see the difference. The difference, because in Persian it's very, very clear, in Arabic I mean. But in English you have to think about it a little bit. Resignation is when you resign yourself to something. But inwardly you may be grumbling. You see, silently you may be very dissatisfied. You grumble. He doesn't like that grumble. He says, all right, you are resigned, but I want you to be willingly submissive. Or there is another term in Baha'i terminology, radiantly acquiescent. Radiant acquiescence. You see? There are two different stages. One is to accept, one is to bow, let us say. Bow to the will of God. You go to a king, let us say, and you are in his presence, and there are the ministers there, and He comes in and you are there too, and everybody bows for the king. You bow too. Now God knows what's going on in your heart or mind. You may not like that king. You may think that king is a tyrant, but for the sake of the protocol, you bow. He says, all right, this is an outward obedience. But this is not enough for me. I want a willing submission, not just an outward resignation. There is a difference between the two. And the next section is 8. Let him then raise his hands thrice and say. Now, someone has asked Shoghi Effendi this question. This is the way it goes. As to the direction which states, let him then raise his hands thrice and say, an individual believer asked the beloved guardian the following question. The direction to raise the hands thrice and say, greater is God than every great one. Does this mean after every raising of the hands, or only to be said once after the 3 raisings? Do you follow his question? Shoghi Effendi's answer. The hands should be raised 3 times, and each time the sentence be repeated in conjunction with the act. Okay? So we move on. I have no comments on number 9. Number 10, I think, is a very profound statement here that we can look at. I testify unto that whereunto have testified all created things. And this is my reading now. And the concourse on high, the inmates of the all-highest paradise, and beyond them, the tongue of grandeur. Now, with or without my turban, as you like, I think that the concourse on high is very clear. It is the next world and the sanctified souls, the angels, so to speak, of the next world. The inmates, because he says beyond them, because there are stages, levels, layers. Beyond them, and the inmates of the all-highest paradise. I think this paradise here refers to the world of the manifestations of God. That's what I think. When I read this, this is what it means to me. Now, it may not mean to you, God bless you, you can think what you like, that's fine. And beyond them, the tongue of grandeur is the Lord himself, God himself, the deity. So, it is the same 3 levels that we have on the ringstone, the symbol, the symbol of the ringstone. You've got 3 lines, and it is God, the invisible, the unknown, and then the manifestations of God, and then the creation, you and I. So these are the 3 levels. Here you've got the concourse on high, you've got the manifestations, and then you've got God himself. And then when he says, he who has been manifested in the hidden mystery, these are titles of Baha'u'llah. The hidden mystery, the treasured symbol, through whom the letter B and E have been joined and knit together. Now someone has asked Shoghi Effendi about B and E, which is of course to be. And this is what he has answered. The passage you refer to in the obligatory prayer concerning the letters B and E, it signifies the power of the manifestation of God, his great spiritual creative force. It does not mean that God and his creation have been joined together by Baha'u'llah. Probably the writer thought that. And then the next section, you've got all these descriptions, descriptive titles that Baha'u'llah has conferred upon us and our condition. So I don't need to go through it all. And then on page 3, Now, I mean, the continuation of section 11, we come to this sentence which needs some comment. It goes like this: I entreat thee by thy footsteps in this wilderness, and by the words, here am I, which thy chosen ones have uttered in this immensity, and by the breaths of thy revelation and the gentle winds of the dawn of thy manifestation. Now, this refers, I think, to the prophets of God and how they gradually manifest themselves and reveal themselves. So it starts like this: by thy footsteps in this wilderness. That means they come to this world. Footsteps here means they step into this world, the manifestations of God. Then by the words, here am I, here am I. Here am I, here am I in the original is labbaik, labbaik. Labbaik is used, comes from the verb labba in Arabic, which means, here I am, I'm waiting for your command, do as you wish. This is the term which is used there. It is the call, an answer to a call. That means the Lord calls on this manifestation of God. And the manifestation of God says, here am I, here I come. So by the words, here am I, which thy chosen ones. Notice that Shoghi Effendi has put ones with a capital O, because it refers to the manifestations of God. Chosen ones have uttered in this immensity. It refers to this universe, to this world of creation. And then it carries on. And by the breaths of thy revelation. You see, now the manifestation has come. He has responded to the call of his Lord. Here am I, here am I. And now by the breaths of thy revelation, the first breaths, the first intimations of his revelation, and the gentle winds of the dawn of thy manifestation. So the gradual unfoldment of the station of the manifestation of God. This is how I read it. Number 12, I think, is very clear. Let him then repeat the greatest name thrice. The greatest name here is Allahu Abha. And they have asked Shoghi Effendi, and he says, the intention here is Allahu Abha. And then bend down with hands resting on the knees and so on. And now, you see, in continuation of this revelation of the manifestations of God, now you and I, Baha'u'llah makes us say that now thou, that means the Lord, has caused me to you hast made known unto me him who is the dayspring of thy signs. That means I have recognized the manifestation for today, and has caused me to bow down before thy Lordship. That means this is faith. I have accepted, I have recognized, and I'm obeying. So you see, this is how it is. It's the continuation of the earlier thought. And then you go on, number 13, it's again a whole chain, a whole series of describing our condition of wretchedness and sinfulness and heedlessness and so on. And then finally, then in number 14, let him then repeat the greatest name thrice, which is again repeating Allahu Akbar. And then this 14 is very interesting, because all the way from number 1 to number 14 to number 13, it has been me, I. Suddenly here it becomes plural. I on behalf of humanity. Praise be unto thee, O our God, that thou hast sent down unto us that which draweth nigh unto thee, and supplies us with every good thing sent down by thee in thy books and thy scriptures. Protect us, we beseech thee, O my Lord, from the hosts of idle fancies. Now, this is very important to me here. We are coming to the end of the prayer. We have accepted Baha'u'llah. He makes us say that we have accepted thee, we have recognized thee. After becoming Baha'is, here he tells, pray that you, as a believer, as a registered believer in good standing, you will be protected from idle fancies and vain imaginations. And then he precedes this with what? With hosts. Hosts means soldiers. Hosts means an army. These idle fancies are like an army that coming forward, they're trampling on us, these idle fancies. He says, say, "Oh Lord, protect me now from these idle thoughts." So we are continuously under tests and trials. And these tests and trials we should not be afraid of. We should use them for our growth, for our spiritual advancement. We should even welcome them when they come. We should certainly recognize them. We should be so heedless that they come and go and we don't recognize that the test has come and gone. We should pray to the Lord that He will give us that eye to recognize the test when it comes. And so that we can overcome it. We can meet it. We can be able to triumph over it and use it not as a stumbling block, but use it as a stepping stone and go forward, go higher. And finally, number 15, I testify, O my God, to that whereunto thy chosen ones have testified, and acknowledge that which the inmates of the all-highest paradise and those who have circled round thy mighty throne have acknowledged. The kingdoms of earth and heaven are thine, O Lord of the worlds. Finita la musica. God bless you all. Thank you.
I'm sure from tomorrow, those who choose to say the long obligatory prayer will say it with a different spirit. And we owe it to our speaker tonight, Mr. Nakhjavani. Thank you very much. This talk tonight was all the more significant in light of the recent decision of the Universal House of Justice to make some aspects of the law of the obligatory prayer universally applicable. Of course, for those who say the long obligatory prayer. Before we end this ihtifal with a closing prayer, I'd like to thank the ihtifal committee for pursuing the matter until it materialized, and we had the ihtifal tonight. They have asked me to invite you to refreshments after the closing prayer, which will be said by Mr. Ramin Ardekani. The first prayer, the opening prayer, was recited by Mr. Arash Yekrangi.
Make firm our steps, O Lord, in thy path, and strengthen thou our hearts in thine obedience. Turn our faces toward the beauty of thy oneness, and gladden our bosoms with the signs of thy divine unity. Adorn our bodies with the robe of thy bounty, and remove from our eyes the veil of sinfulness. And give us the chalice of thy grace, that the essence of all beings may sing thy praise before the vision of thy grandeur. Reveal then thyself, O Lord, by thy merciful utterance and the mystery of thy divine being, that the holy ecstasy of prayer may fill our souls, a prayer that shall rise above words and letters and transcend the murmur of syllables and sounds, that all things may be merged into nothingness before the revelation of thy splendor. Lord, these are servants that have remained fast and firm in thy covenant and thy testament, that have held fast unto the cord of constancy in thy cause, and clung unto the hem of the robe of thy grandeur. Assist them, O Lord, with thy grace, confirm with thy power, and strengthen their loins in obedience to thee. Thou art the pardoner, the gracious. Ablutions.